They did the impossible from Cyberpunk 2077 junk. The game went trough the hell and becomes Cyberpunk 2077 masterpiece. From promises to failure, how was Cyberpunk 2077 launched? The 2077 dream, a promised technological utopia. The city night hums, the lights penetrates deep into your retina, and the promises of technology seem to pulse in unison with your heartbeats. In 2018, it was not just about a game, it was a vision, it was a dream. After the resounding success of The Witcher 3, the development company CD Projekt RED was no longer a simple Polish studio, but a hero of the industry, a company that proved a single-player game, based on a complex story, could conquer the world. When it came to Cyberpunk 2077, anticipation was not a simple wait, it was a blind faith, a conviction that this studio would, once again, redefine a world. From the very beginning, there were signals that should have tempered our enthusiasm. The first gameplay trailer in 2018, a 48-minute showcase, was a historic moment, but game director Adam Badowski delivered a key message that was quickly lost in the hype. He openly stated that the video had been recorded from a game, deep in development, and that many elements were still in the playtest phase. Badowski admitted they felt uneasy about releasing the footage because it was likely that the game we would see at launch would be different. Technically, the company was honest, but in the context of the marketing campaign that followed, this warning became a merely footnote, completely ignored by a public hungry for promises. The game also boasted a massive budget, estimated at over $300 million, making it one of the most expensive video games ever made. Then came the moment that turned the hype into a cultural phenomenon. At the Electronic Entertainment Expo in 2019, a name that transcended the industry stepped onto the stage, Keanu Reeves. He was not just a voice, but the central character, Johnny Silverhand. When a fan from the audience shouted that he was breathtaking, Keanu responded with a sincere smile. "You're breathtaking" instantly. The moment went viral, and the game surpassed the boundaries of video games. Keanu Reeves became synonymous with Cyberpunk 2077, a marketing choice that poured gasoline on an already enormous fire. This seemingly brilliant decision, however, had a profound consequence. Research shows that Reeves was brought into the project relatively late. His character, Johnny Silverhand, who was initially just one of several childhood heroes that could have met, had his role massively expanded. This dramatic change to the script redirected the entire story towards a narrower axis, potentially sacrificing the complex ramifications of the stories originally promised in favor of Reeves' star power. It was a decision that, in a way, betrayed the essence of a pure role-playing game in favor of a cinematic spectacle. With each trailer, with each interview, the list of promises grew, fueling a collective fantasy. We were told that Night City would be a living city, with thousands of individual routines for non-player characters. The police system was supposed to be deep, with corrupt agents capable of being bribed, and a bounty system where other non-player characters would try to hunt V for money. It was promised a world where life choices, nomad, street kid, or corporate, would have a real impact on the story and interactions. Fans created elaborate theories about a variety of brain dances, acid rain that would pose a threat to survival, and drones that would have expanded roles. An empire of hope was built, a glass citadel that a single shock could shatter. The hype empire crumbles, the launch disaster, and the shock came. On December 10th, 2020, the empire of hype crumbled. Reality hit with brutal force, creating a seismic fracture in the gaming community. There was a striking, almost shocking, difference between the personal computer experience and that on the base consoles. While the personal computer version, although full of bugs and with underdeveloped mechanics, was functional, consoles received a product entirely different. This was not a failed launch, it was a technical catastrophe of biblical proportions. On PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, the game ran with an absolutely terrible frame rate, regularly dropping to values of 10 frames per second, making combat and driving almost unplayable. The open world, full of promises, became a visual nightmare, with textures and geometry that would not load, characters that appeared as pixelated blocks, and floating non-player characters or those behaving chaotically. The promised police system, for example, proved to be completely dysfunctional, with officers magically appearing out of nowhere, a few meters behind the player, without any realistic pursuit. All these defects were not simple errors, but signs of a game released in an unacceptable state. The most controversial aspect of the launch, however, was the revelation of a deliberate lie. It was discovered that CD Projekt RED had deliberately refused to send console copies of the game to the press before launch. Instead, they provided carefully curated personal computer versions, creating the illusion of an impeccable experience. This decision was not a simple accident or oversight. It was a calculated move to hide the deplorable state of the game on the dominant hardware of the market. Critics, who only saw the personal computer version, gave high scores, while most players, who bought the game for consoles, were left with an almost broken product. It was not a failure due to bugs, but a betrayal of trust, a demonstration that the financial interests of shareholders weighed more than the final state of the product. This chasm between grandiose promises and the cruel reality of the launch was stark. The promised living city with thousands of individual routines for non-player characters felt dead at launch, with characters often dematerializing or behaving chaotically. The complex police system, which was supposed to include car chases and logic, was completely dysfunctional, with officers magically appearing out of nowhere. The game ran with a terrible frame rate, often dropping as low as 10 frames per second during combat. Car chases were a promised mechanical option that was either not implemented or non-functional. The impact of life choices, nomad, street kid, or corporate, was significantly reduced, having a minimal effect on the gameplay and story. Lastly, the promised variety of brain dances was reduced to only a small number of pre-arranged sequences. Night in the Broken City: The Fall of Reputation and Industry Reaction. The reaction was a perfect storm of anger and disappointment. Metacritic was flooded with negative reviews, and CD Projekt RED's unshakable reputation crumbled. Players accused the company of lying, deception, and consumer exploitation. Investigations and class action lawsuits were initiated, which ended with a settlement of $85 million. The peak of the catastrophe was an unprecedented decision by Sony Interactive Entertainment, removing the game from the PlayStation Store. This was not a common move. It was a public statement. Internal sources indicated that Sony made this decision after CD Projekt RED publicly instructed consumers to seek refunds from the platforms where they had purchased the game, essentially transferring the burden and anger to Sony. Sony could no longer sell a game for which it was offering a special refund system. This decision was a stinging slap to CD Projekt RED and sent a clear message to the industry. You cannot release a broken product and expect your partners to cover your mistakes. The game was delisted from December 2020 until June 2021. In the midst of this chaos, CD Projekt RED published an apology video. Co-founder Marcin Iwinski took responsibility, admitting that they had underestimated the task of optimizing such a massive game for old consoles. Although they offered refunds, the sincerity of this gesture was questioned. Many saw it as a calculated move, forced by a wave of complaints and legal pressure. The sheer numbers of the disaster tell a painful story. At launch in December 2020, the personal computer version had a critic metascore of 86 from 92 reviews, with a user score of 7.3 based on 38,282 ratings. In stark contrast, the PlayStation 4 version held a grim critic metascore of just 54 from 17 reviews. The fallout led to the game's unprecedented delisting from the PlayStation Store, where it remained unavailable from December 2020 until June 2021. The company also faced investigations and class action lawsuits, which were ultimately settled for a $85 million agreement. Years later, the story found a moment of redemption with the Phantom Liberty expansion, which received a favorable user score of 8 from 3,127 ratings. The redemption of a digital soul: The Long Road Home. After the collapse, a long, arduous journey began. This was a story of anonymous developers who went through months of silent and tireless work to fix what had been broken. These people, who probably deserve every chance to be proud of the game they made, put their shoulders to a massive effort. The first major step was patch 1.5. This was not just a simple bug update. It was a fundamental overhaul of the game, with improvements to non-player character artificial intelligence, rebalancing of the economy, and most importantly, the introduction of V's appearance customization after the game's launch. Another minor but emblematic change was the addition of the walk option, a trivial functionality, but one that showed an increased attention to detail. The real revolution, however, came with Update 2.0. This free update fundamentally transformed the game, rewriting core mechanics. The perk system was completely redone, offering players much greater freedom to build their character. The police artificial intelligence, which at launch was a joke, was replaced with a dynamic, heat-level system, similar to that in Grand Theft Auto, with police who chase you in cars and a gradual response to crimes. For the first time, a vehicle combat system was introduced, a much desired functionality. These were not simple fixes, but a complete reconstruction of the game's backbone. The culmination of this journey was the release of the Phantom Liberty expansion in September 2023. It was met with a wave of appreciation, with some calling it a masterpiece in itself and essential content. It demonstrated the untapped potential of Night City, offering a new, captivating story, memorable characters, and a standalone game area, Dogtown, that improved all aspects of gameplay. This long journey to redemption was marked by several key updates. The first major step was patch 1.5, released in February 2022, which brought a reworked artificial intelligence system, the ability to customize V's appearance at a mirror, new apartments, and a rebalancing of the economy. This was followed by the transformative Update 2.0 in September 2023, which completely overhauled the perks and cyberware system, introduced vehicle combat, and implemented a dynamic police heat-level system. The culmination of these efforts was the release of the premium downloadable content, Phantom Liberty, also in September 2023. It added a new storyline, the District of Dogtown, town, new characters, the relic skill tree, and other major improvements to the game. The legacy a phase of redemption or another type of failure? So, we come to the final question. Was the story of Cyberpunk 2077 a phase of redemption or a different form of failure? The argument for success is convincing. The game, in its final state, is an extremely solid title and even one of the best games ever played. It is a testament to the developer's dedication and an inspirational story about a company that went through the mud to fix a huge mistake, an attitude that few other studios would have had. It showed that, with time and effort, an almost broken product can be transformed into a masterpiece. But there is also a counter-argument. Could CD Projekt RED redeem itself technically, but also morally? Critics say that the perfect version of the game today risks erasing the shameful history of its launch. This is a willing erasure of history that we are doomed to repeat if we forget its tough lessons. Furthermore, although many things have been fixed, some of the initial promises, such as a deep faction system or a city that changes radically based on choices, have never been fully realized. The game today is an excellent title, but it is not, in its entirety, the game that was promised. Ultimately, the story of Cyberpunk 2077 is a complex case study of ambition, corporate greed, market pressure, but also of human dedication and redemption. It is not a simple story with a hero and a villain, but a complex parable. It is a testament to the fact that, in an industry driven by numbers and promises, technical, human, and moral reality always has the last word. Has the industry truly learned its lesson, or will the next breathtaking moment of another overhyped game simply repeat history? The decision is yours.